Hi there, welcome everybody. Thanks for joining us today for this Administrator Better Together event for us to share some best practices and good ideas with one another. I'm just going to put it out there front. Usually we have about 30 or 40 people on this event that we do, and we've got a pretty small group today here, but you're here and we really appreciate you making the time. So we want to make it the best it can be for you. So we do have some good tips that we've gathered from administrators across the country. So hopefully you can share with one another, but we can also share those tips. So that's what we're here for today. So if you feel like it would be great to go ahead and, unmute yourself and, be on camera if you feel comfortable, so that we can just make this a discussion and how these ideas can work for your schools. I think that's going to be the best use of your time. So just putting that out there. So we'll get started here. Today, what we've got in store for you is a little bit talking about what we're here for, welcome and introduction, and then really tackling these three questions. We surveyed the administrators out there and found that these are the three hottest issues going on for most administrators in the country right now: student engagement, how do we improve teaching and learning, and how do we address teacher morale. And so not a huge shift, but a little bit of a shift from when we did this at the end of last year, right, Dawn? I think where
I think it was about a year ago to last October. Yeah.
Last October. Okay. Yeah. So where teacher morale, and that was even higher, but it's still on the list. But it was nice to kind of see some normalcy come back with student engagement and improving teaching and learning back on the list at the top. So we'll just do some discussion around those, and then give you some of those tips that we've shared or we've learned from others, and share those with you, and then talk about if there's things that we can do to help. We would love to be able to do that with you. And hopefully you enjoy your cider and donuts candle, because who doesn't love that? And we'll also do a giveaway. And since there's only a few of you on the call today, everyone gets the giveaway, and you'll get your choice of a lunch and learn, or I think we did, was it Blue Apple Projects, 3 of them, Dawn?
Yes, 3 Blue Apple Projects or a lunch and learn.
Or lunch. So your choice. So we'll show you at the end how you can do that. So let's introduce ourselves now. Oh no, we have our fun little poll. Okay, this is going to force you to engage. So we'll start right off, and play along too, Dawn. But you can only choose 2. This is sort of a fun thing we saw up on social media from We Are Teachers recently. So if you want to either just shout it out, or you can put it in the chat box, whichever one you're more comfortable with. Which of these 2 would you choose? Free delivered lunch, personal assistant, bring your dog to work, a class cap of 15 for your teachers, unlimited budget, or 2 planning periods for your teachers? Let's see. We'll give you a couple minutes to think on this. It's a tough one.
It is.
I'm driving, so I'm going to just unmute instead of try to type. But
Perfect.
I definitely would love an unlimited budget and 2 planning periods.
That's a good one. It's kind of hard to imagine how many of these things you can't do with an unlimited budget, right? Like you could get a personal assistant with an unlimited budget.
That's a good point. Now I might change my answer.
Well, no, you said
with an unlimited but with an unlimited budget, I could buy the 2 planning periods. So so then I would like a personal assistant also.
Okay. Yeah. Fun to dream. What about you, Dawn?
I went personal assistant. I remember, well, when I was in the classroom, just being able to get my life in order, and grading papers and helping with the labs and all that. But even now, personal assistant would be great. And then I would probably say a class size of 15. Yeah.
That definitely makes a big difference.
Yeah.
I know I was thinking like class size of 15 plus unlimited budget, which I feel like are related, but I also think I do feel like both of those would be where I would go.
Yeah. I think I go the unlimited budget, and I just think the money can't always buy you time. So I think those 2 planning periods that seems really like a dream to me as well. Anybody else want to join in? All right.
All
right. thanks for playing along. I don't think we had any of the chat. Yeah. So I'm Tara Tarango. I'm the director here at the Van Andel Institute for Education, and we work for a really cool place. It's a big part of it is a biomedical science research facility. So there are scientists from all over the world studying all kinds of different diseases, and it's really great to have that insight into what that career actually looks like. So that when we are working with students directly, we have after school programs, we do field trips here, we have summer camps, those sorts of things, or when we're working with teachers to help them engage their students in inquiry-based and project-based, more authentic learning. It's really great to have that purview of what actual science looks like. So it's just kind of an interesting take that we get here. So that's me, I'm Tara. And Dawn, you want to introduce yourself?
Sure. Yeah, I'm Dawn, and I've been with the Van Andel Institute for almost 7 years now. But prior to that, I was a high school science teacher, and I just am so passionate about creating these classrooms that are inquiry driven. They're curious. They instill creative and critical thinking. And inquiry science and project-based learning do that. And so we employ a lot of those characteristics with the students we work with here, but also the classrooms that we're in throughout the year. So I'm just so excited to have this conversation and talk about those priorities for the school year and how we could support you and your teachers in your efforts.
Exactly. And as we go through, like I mentioned, we have several tips and strategies that we've gathered over the past, I guess, 6 months or so. And all of those are in this resource document. So Aaron there, he's also here with us. He's going to put that in the chat box so that if you want to access that later when you're not driving or as we go, either way, or you can, if you're on your phone, if you prefer that way, you can also do the QR code. But I want to let you know that don't worry about taking tons of notes. All of this will be in that handout. All right, so just very briefly, as I mentioned, we surveyed our folks and looked at what they are most concerned about. It was really interesting to see how these three kind of rose to the top, and how some other things that were even like teacher sub shortage. I was sort of surprised it was such a big deal, and maybe where you are that is still the problem. I don't want to understate it, but it was kind of nice to see that wasn't as big of a problem as it was the last time we did this survey. So that's what we'll talk about today. So we'll open it up. We like to really just sort of hear from each other with those three questions. So we'll kind of start off with, how are you addressing student engagement? And again, after we talk a little bit, and if you're not in a position where you can talk too much, we can move on to our slides sharing ideas. But it's always good to hear from you guys. What are you guys doing right now to address student engagement, or how are you finding student engagement this year?
I'm going to stop share. So if anyone wants to open up and we can see each other's.
I know one thing. Oh, go ahead.
No, I was going to say, hi, Sarah.
I know one thing for us we're trying to do is getting, because of the last few years, we haven't been able to get kids out of the building, trying to get them out, doing things on field trips or doing things even where the last couple of years we haven't been able to have parents in. We're trying to think about some of the things we haven't been able to do that feel fresh and different, trying to make sure we're including some of those.
I think it's interesting you say it like that too, because things that may seem old hat to us having been in education for a while, like bringing the parents, for many of these kids, they haven't had a regular school year in 3 years. So that will seem very fresh,
Right.
Doing that.
I know one of the things that we've had, I've done several field trips where it was the first time any of these kids had been on a bus before.
Wow.
And it was super weird. Things like that you don't think about because they haven't had field trips. Or they hadn't, some of the parents who had never been chaperones before, or they, just things like that may be traditional kind of things that you would normally do, but we haven't been able to do the last couple of years.
Right.
Yeah. That makes sense. Get outside, get those parents, field trips. What else are you guys doing for student engagement? You feel like student engagement is different this year than it has been in previous years? Do you notice any difference? I've heard a lot about behavior issues. I'm wondering if you're finding that to be the case now.
I definitely know that's been something like social emotional learning and being able to function with other people. That was an issue last year, and I think it's continued into this year.
I think so too.
Whether it's group work or just functioning in a classroom still has been an issue.
Yeah.
Right. Kind of getting back to those basics, but still moving forward. Right. So there's, yeah, definitely.
All right, we can think about the next one, which is kind of
Yeah.
related, but the next question there is, what are you doing to improve teaching and learning? Are there things that either new things you've been able to try this year or looking to try, or they're like to your point earlier, some things that maybe you haven't been able to do in a while that you're bringing back, or maybe you're just looking for ideas on improving teaching and learning. But let's start with if there is something out there that you're doing or thinking of doing, or your teachers want to try.
Yeah.
I know we have a lot of new teachers this year, and some teachers who are, well, they're still college students, but they're in a classroom. And so like trying to figure out how to, maybe in a different way than what we've done in the past, work on teacher retention and like supporting those folks while they're in this first year that they're in the classroom. And so I think with Zoom, we can do things differently, even if they're split between buildings, but like really trying to think about for those new teachers, how do we make sure that they're supported? And so I know it is teaching, but yeah, for a lot of it, there's definitely been a lot more coaching I've been doing this.
Yeah, we have
trying to get them.
Go ahead, Dana. I think you're on good now.
we have a really similar situation with many new teachers and some still in college, on like teach for tomorrow, all of those like kind of fast track programs. And so one thing that we're trying to get going is department chairs to cover them so that they can go and see other teachers. Like peer observations, basically. So we're sending them to places where we know, they're expert teachers.
I love that idea.
That's great. Is that K-12, Dana?
I'm just at a high school.
Okay. Looking at the school.
Yeah.
Great.
Yeah.
Excellent.
Yep.
Yeah.
And
We
Sarah,
know how important that new teacher kind of mentor and that support is, that first year, into the first, 3-5 years even. And that's one thing that we've started to do. Actually, this year, we just piloted a program for new teachers. And like to your point, Sarah, you mentioned the Zoom. And so we're able to connect with teachers all across the country that you can engage in this kind of network and get practical strategies on those hot topics like classroom management and maybe differentiation or assessment, feedback, a lot of those things that are really big topics, but they're just starting off. And so how can we give them support that they need? So I think that's really great to hear both of you and Dana talk about kind of your new teacher approaches, because it is so important.
Makes me think too, maybe that's why, we saw the teacher shortage and sub shortage down, because you've hired so many new teachers. We've been successful. It didn't look like that was going to be able to happen for a while, but somehow you guys found them. So congrats on that. But yeah, that's a big hurdle to try to get them all feeling confident and competent in what is a really difficult job that many of them I think are kind of surprised by. They're so excited to get their new classroom, and then they realize how hard this job is to do the way they want to do it.
Right.
I definitely agree. Hats off on the new teacher angle for that. Excellent. Anything else on teaching and learning you want to share before we move on? Right. We'll go to our third question, which is around teacher morale. What are you doing to keep that morale up? We saw certainly at the end of last year, I think it was an all-time low. And so I do feel like it's a little bit better going into this year. The summer break did help. But I think we're all really kind of on eggshells, just like waiting for that to possibly break again, or not wanting to lose these teachers that we've worked so hard to get. So I'm guessing maybe you guys feel the same way. What are you doing for teacher retention, teacher wellness, teacher morale?
I definitely feel like this is an issue I've been thinking a lot about, is how to do more of this. We tried some stuff last year. One of them, I think one of the ones that worked the best that I will probably do again this fall is having teachers nominate other teachers for awards, and having not like long nominations, but basically where they get warm fuzzies and actually get things, but they get to be, it's not me necessarily, but from their peers recognizing who's doing well. So, I mean, it's nice when you can give them stuff, but I think recognizing them and having that in front of their peers has helped some. I definitely feel like this is one of the big challenges that I feel like this year that I definitely struggling with.
Gotcha.
Oh, absolutely.
Any other thoughts on how you're protecting teacher morale? What are you doing to keep that up?
Well, for me, we've tried, like, even this year, previous years, and even this year, we have a committee and they organize like some after school events for the teachers, for the staff. And we just had like a staff tailgate prior to our homecoming football game. And we still get that same cluster of people who come. It's just the same people that come to everything. So, and people may have good excuses. They have families, they have little children, they have elderly parents, everyone has a reason why they don't want to stick around on a, Friday football night. But what we found most successful is to do things when they have to be there, like we've had some half days within the school year. And so we grilled for them, hamburgers, hot dogs, all the sides and everything, but it was when they still had to be there. And so what happens is then those new people do get to meet other people, so because we have a lot of new teachers, like I said. So finding things when they all have to be there, not doing the after hour things. It's the same group. So, yeah.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. And it's, finding the time a lot of times is tricky, and a time that works for everybody. But when everyone's there, that to capitalize on that is a great idea.
Definitely a couple good tips.
Yeah, absolutely. What Sarah had mentioned about the peer-to-peer recognition made me think about something that I'd experienced when I was teaching. Was we would have a composition notebook, and I was a high school teacher, and everyone just couldn't wait to get that in their mailbox, because that meant that someone from the staff recognized you. So it was not admin driven, it was all staff driven, and you would just write kind of an appreciation note, and you would send it and put it in the mailbox. And we just went around to all the staff, and it was a really cool thing. Like, you just got so excited when you saw that. So yeah, I love that idea, Sarah.
Yeah, I do like that too.
Oh, so it's like a rolling continuous composition book.
Yeah.
Oh, that's super cool.
Yeah, it was great. And I think the admin, she did start it, and kind of introduced it, but she wasn't the one that was driving it. But I think there might have been some, I don't know if someone like checked it just to make sure everyone was getting the love, everyone got that at some point. But and that's a great thing to do with students too, like, with affirmations and things in the classroom, for compliments or whatever it happens to be. But I just love that. Everyone wanted the composition notebook.
I love that, you mentioned the peer-to-peer and that you're jumping on that as well, Dana, because it also speaks to the culture that you've established with your teachers, right? Because I think it's something I would caution a little bit if it was a school because sometimes you have those schools where teachers can actually be the biggest drain on other teachers, right? They don't want to recognize those teachers who are creating those kinds of classrooms with amazing experiences, because it makes them look bad, right?
Yeah.
So that's one thing I always get a little bit nervous about with peer-to-peer, recognition, but it speaks, I think, when you've established that culture of that's what everyone is striving for and everyone's super excited to see and super excited to build their peers up. I think it speaks a lot to both of you guys in terms of the culture you're building there that has spoken to that peer-to-peer piece.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We'll definitely be sharing some ideas on these as well. Any other thoughts anybody wants to share? I know we had someone join us as well. We're just sharing some thoughts with each other we're now on teacher morale, ways to improve teacher morale.
I know one thing, and it's kind of a small thing, but I know it has been good for us is when we have teachers out, making sure we're feeding them and not necessarily like cheaping out on snacks, but definitely making sure that it's something good and it feels like it's presented in a way that somebody took time to do it.
Yeah.
That's been something I've thought about a lot this last little bit, is like making sure that if we are going to do whatever it is, like that it is presented nice, that it's like quality kind of stuff. It does cost a little bit more, but I feel like it does help with some of the morale also.
Mhm.
I love that. Yeah. Presentation
Mhm.
kind of makes a difference. It makes you feel cared for. It makes you feel like
Yeah.
someone actually, invested not just some money, but some time and some thought. I think that's a small, but really powerful little tip.
And I also would add, just honoring their team time, like their PLC team time, because that's how they connect with each other too. If you have like a solid team that you're working with, like all the Algebra 2 teachers, for example, that makes a difference, because you don't want to, let each other down if there's a team that's really working well together. So just honoring their time.
Mhm.
Sounds good. Excellent.
Absolutely. Time is a definitely precious resource, isn't it? For sure.
Well, I think we can move on and we'll share some of the
Sure.
tips that we've talked about. But like I said, this is a small group. We can keep it. I mean, we don't want to keep you here too long. So these are things that we could talk about for a long time, or we can go, make it more conversational. So we'll share a few of the ideas that, like I said, we've gathered from administrators we've talked to over the last 6 months. And hopefully these are, along with the ideas you just shared from each other, things that you can incorporate for your school. So we'll kick it over to Dawn. She'll do the first two tips on student engagement and teaching and learning, and I'll take on the last one for wellness and teacher morale.
Perfect. Well, and I do want to say that the first two, they really dovetail, because what I'm going to share with you, they connect, they feed off each other, because we really want to think about engaging students. We want them to be excited and, to be with us and hooked and, can't wait to learn. So there's that level of excitement, enthusiasm. There's also a level of commitment. Right? So we want those two things to be married very well. We don't just want excited students. We want them to really be intrinsically kind of invested or motivated in what they're doing. And to do that, we really need to think about what are those experiences we're putting in the classroom to get them excited to be there, but keeping them for the long term, like hooked on something that is maybe a little bit more purposeful than a quick hitting, maybe 60-minute lesson, something that's a little bit more sustained. So what I wanted to share with you is one of our biggest solutions to student engagement is to think about those learning experiences authentically. How can you bring authentic learning into the classroom? And so we have many different characteristics or best practices that we've identified and that we've used to create these experiences, but I wanted to highlight our top 6 and then show you some just tangible examples of that in the classrooms of the students we work with here at the Institute, but also in classrooms that we work with teachers in as well. The first characteristic is bringing the world to your students, and those real world connections, those experts, is a very important characteristic of authentic learning, where they can see what they're doing connects with something outside of themselves, outside of the classroom. You can also flip that into bringing your students into the world. And so you're upping the stakes. They're having a higher accountability and engagement, because now they're not just sharing their learning, their project with their teacher or the classrooms, or eventually in the trash can, if that's where it goes. They're sharing it with someone that has maybe a stake in the game, with an authentic audience. So it really ups that engagement, ups that level of motivation for a project or that learning experience. If we want to change things to be more authentic, we also need to make sure we have those collaboration options. And one of our principal investigators here at the Research Institute said this so elegantly. He had, a couple years back, and Tara, I know you remember this, he said that there will never be another scientific discovery by a single individual. Everything we do when we solve problems there's going to be a team, a group of people that are working on that particular project. So providing those opportunities, bringing that real world experience in the classroom where the students are collaborating on a problem is very important in upping that engagement, that commitment level. We also want to make sure our students have choice, that they are given the tools not only make informed decisions, but also to be good self managers or project managers, because when we're looking at authentic learning is sustained. We know that in problem solving and purpose-driven learning, we're not going to be solving that in a 60-minute lesson. That is something that's going to take, maybe weeks, maybe a semester, maybe a whole school year to solve this problem or design the solution, whatever it is. And then finally, taking our content and looking at it a little bit differently, breaking down those silos, because if we really want to teach and to learn authentically, we need to show how that content connects together, because that's how content is used. It's knowledge, and knowledge is not segmented into, this is my science knowledge, this is my math knowledge. We use knowledge as knowledge, and showing how those connect and show that relevance and up that student engagement as well. So, Tara, is there anything you wanted to add, kind of those 6?
No, I think you did a great job. One thing I always think about when it comes to authentic audience that makes me
Yeah.
kind of giggle to myself is I always think about, like, it's about student engagement, right? So if they're presenting just to me, I always think they really don't care if they look foolish in front of me, no
Right.
matter how great a rapport I have. But if I bring in, let's say we're studying hurricanes and I brought in someone who was just impacted by Hurricane Ian, they don't want to look foolish in front of that person, right? So
Right.
it kind of increases their their desire to not look stupid, but also to really put their best effort forward when you bring in that authentic audience. So that's just a kind of little anecdote on that one I like to point out.
Yeah, absolutely. That's so true. Actually, those are the first 2 examples I wanted to share, with kind of that whole idea of bringing the world to the classroom and then bringing the classroom to the world. And just a couple of examples here. In this picture, and I think 1 or 2 of you may be driving, but I'll explain it to you. There's that we worked with a class a couple years ago. They were working through one of our projects called 50 Years of Interest. These are 5th graders, and these 5th graders were learning some pretty sophisticated financial literacy concepts tied to their math standards and other cross-curricular standards as well. But their whole goal, their problem that they were trying to solve is like, how can we make sure our high school seniors in our district understand financial literacy? Because we know that's been a big problem, right? For students leaving senior year, not really understanding finances. So they want to make a difference. So they ended up creating lesson plans that were interactive and engaging. But along the way, they needed some help. They needed assistance from someone that was actually in the field. And you can see on that picture, they were zoomed in from a financial advisor who provided them some support, expertise, but also gave them feedback along the way to make sure that they were creating something that was going to help those senior students move forward in their understanding. So that's an example of that. And then this is one that I actually can look out my office not too far and see a few of the planets here. This summer, we brought our camp classroom out into the world. Well, our world here in Grand Rapids, at least. And we had our summer camp, the Journey Through Space students. So these were, I believe, these were Girl Scout students, and maybe, I think 5th grade was the grade level, 5th, 6th grade. And they were tasked with not only understanding the vastness of the universe and traveling through space and the vastness of, our tiny part, the solar system within the universe, of creating a solar system model in Grand Rapids. So we used Grand Rapids as kind of our distance, and they accurately scaled according to the size of the sun and the planets and the distance between them to create this experience. And you can see there in that picture, we actually took the students and their parents, the campers and their parents, out on a tour of downtown Grand Rapids so they could see their work. So a really great example of that authentic audience piece. So it wasn't just them making a scale model of the solar system and just having it in the classroom and talking about it as a class, but it went out into Grand Rapids, businesses were contacted. They put these planets up, and now the entire community can enjoy this type of experience. So that's an example here that we just really love to see people walk by our building and look at the sun and take a look at some of the other planets nearby. A couple other examples I wanted to share with you of authentic learning. This was a 5th grade class that we're working on. It's called High Energy, and they were looking at energy usage, and we put them in these collaborative groups. And what they were trying to do in this collaborative type of activity is decide how much wattage do each of these common household appliances use. So they were learning about wattage, they're learning about BTUs. So they were collaborating, they were debating, they were discussing, they were working together. Once they figured that out and came to consensus, then they really kind of understood what it meant to be energy conservative, and what does it mean to, like, the unit for watt, what does that mean, and how does that impact their life at home. So we want to provide them with an opportunity to take this home, and gave them that kind of student driven type of piece where, like, okay, now you understand what a watt is, you understand what BTU is, you've got some idea of some common appliances. Now let's go to your home and create this home energy audit, like thinking about what are the things that you're using at home, and what does that cost kind of break down to per month. And so it's just a really great exercise for them to take that home. And then they brought it back to school. They worked back in their collaborative groups, and they used that information to help them create an energy audit for the school. So now they took it up a step further and, like, okay, what can we do in our school to conserve energy? And they pitched it to the board and made some suggestions on how they can be a little bit more energy conscious at their school as well. So another great example of authentic learning where students are self-directed, but also very collaborative.
Hey, John, I also want to point out, I got a direct message here asking if they can learn more about the project. So in your Hyperdoc, I'm sure there's links to get to those projects.
Absolutely. So all of these, the projects that I'm sharing, the last 2 that I just shared are on our website. Yes, the High Energy and the 50 Years of Interest. They're one of our Blue Apple projects. So yeah, it's all in the Hyperdoc as well. Yes, great question. Thanks, Tara. Okay, so I want to share this one. This is actually one of my favorite projects that came out of last year. This is called the Wiggle Way project. And I'm actually going to have to stop sharing for a second, just because I want to make sure you can hear the sound. So please bear with me, because with all my technical issues, I didn't click the button. So
I'll preface it if you want while you get that ready. So
yeah.
These were for kindergartners, and they noticed that sometimes kindergartners have the wiggles, and and they can't pay attention. So what are we going to do about this? So this was the problem, that just to show you that this can happen, high level with, high school students, but also down to the kindergarten level to solve real world problems.
Absolutely. And so I wanted to kind of let you know that this is a very sustained, and think about this. This is kindergarten. They worked on this project for 9 weeks. And the students were excited to do this the entire 9 weeks. They brought in forces in motion. They did some ELA because they did some letter writing to the principal and to the board. They did a survey of other kindergarten classes to find out, kind of get their thoughts on what their wiggle way should look like. They researched other wiggle ways in other schools. It was just a very incredible project, and it definitely showed that the sustainability of something like this and the engagement of these students. So I wanted to share with you kind of the final project. They put this out in their hallways in the school, like by the kindergarten classrooms, but then they took those and then brought them to the gym for the showcase that they shared with parents and community members. So I just wanted to kind of share with you just a real quick clip of this in action here. Hoping you can hear it. Tara, let me know if it.
I got to go over the bear crawl.
Yeah. This is the bear crawl.
Are you going to show the bear crawl off? This is so neat. This is great for getting your wiggles out, isn't it? That is awesome. Yes, I want to see yours. Just a sec. Let's see the rest of the wiggle way. Oh, the spins and the crab walk. Oh, that is awesome.
Okay. And I know I think there are one or two of you are driving, but this will also, the slides will be linked. So you'll have access to this video so you can watch this as well. Again, it was a very sustained project. The students had a problem that they needed to get the wiggles out, and they spent 9 weeks investigating, making sure they had the support of the administration, and they put it into practice. So, and it is still in use this year. So it's a really incredible project. One of my favorites. And the last one I want to hit on was that kind of cross-curricular piece, you know, showing that the content is connected. And I know and I acknowledge that, you know, elementary and secondary a little bit different when it comes to cross-curricular. It's, you know, in elementary, you are teaching all of these. In secondary, it's a little bit trickier logistically to try to manage that, but thinking of ways to really connect whatever it is you're teaching to maybe something else you might be teaching in the future, but just showing that things aren't in these kind of separate, siloed buckets. The content works together in the context of a very meaningful, purposeful project. So one of the other projects that we developed called The Dirty Truth, again, these are linked in the hyperdoc access to kind of the overviews of these projects, you can see them. In this project, students are challenged to take a side. They learn about space exploration, in particular Mars, traveling to Mars, but also colonizing Mars. Or do they want to really concern their efforts on preservation of Earth? And so they have a little bit of debate, they discuss, they do some investigating, and then they choose a side. And then we have Team Mars and we have Team Earth, and they create a fundraiser and an awareness piece where they bring the community in and they raise funds for their particular organization to either study space exploration, Mars exploration, or a preservation of Earth. So it's just an incredible project for both a collaborative piece, also getting the community involved, and you can see all the different content that's connected here. In English language arts, the students are analyzing articles from space exploration, learning about Mars. And social studies are learning about how government funds programs like space exploration, like NASA, or environmental programs. In math, it's very evident when you're looking at the vastness of not only just the solar system, but the universe. So bringing the idea, the concept of the powers of 10. In science, they're studying the soil of both Earth, but then the soil, or what we call the Martian regolith, as well, and looking at, well, in Earth soil, we have all these microbes and macro invertebrates, and we have all this kind of richness in the soil that allows for that vegetation to grow. And how is that important for us here on Earth? And is that lacking on Mars? Why is that lacking on Mars? And having those great conversations. And then finally, bringing in that social and emotional learning piece, which we know is so important. Understanding those relationship skills as you're discussing and you're debating on, are you Team Mars? Are you Team Earth? And that social awareness piece, like you're doing something outside of yourself, outside of the classroom, and making a difference in the world around you. So those are the 6 main characteristics for authentic learning, and some examples of that. Tara, was there anything you wanted to add to that at all?
I think just pointing out, I love that you included the social emotional learning there. Sometimes we like to think of it like a content area. So when we're thinking about cross-curricular, what other content areas can I bring in? That's one thing we like to do, is to try to think of social emotional learning that way. And as we talked about at the beginning, that being still a very important issue. It's just a nice way to weave them into projects like this, that they just fit really nicely.
Right, exactly. And then I'm going to zip through this next part very quickly, because I kind of hit those 6 main characteristics, but they really tie into kind of improving teaching and learning. You know, so if authentic learning increases student engagement, which means the students are not only excited, but they're committed, they're invested in what they're learning. How do we get there? What do we do? We support our teachers. How do we help them create these classrooms that are relevant, they're meaningful, and they're fun? And so I just want to give you kind of 4 main steps to do that. One is to help your teachers rethink the lesson planning process. Typical lesson planning is I have to teach decimals. How can I make decimals interesting and relevant, right? That's your typical kind of lesson planning approach. Well, in authentic learning and or project-based learning, we flip that. We look at our students. What do my students find interesting, relevant? What's going on in my community? What problem can we solve? And how can I connect decimals, narrative text, whatever it happens to be, to that? So that's the first step, thinking about that and coming up with an idea. And I have a list of ideas in the hyperdoc there too to help springboard your teachers and kind of thinking about those bigger project ideas where they can connect their content to. The second step is that having your teachers answer these 3 big questions. How are they going to engage their students emotionally? What are their students going to do? What hands-on, what's the activities that they're going to be involved in? And what will your students learn? What are those skills and the content that they're going to be engaged in? So once you've answered those 3 big questions, then it's time for your teachers to plan these out. And we've created this storyboard or framework that we use. This is what we use to build those Blue Apple projects, or those projects I shared with you that we've also linked in the hyperdoc. And that first page, that's all about kind of that really high level overview. What are those 3 big questions? You see them right in the center there. What are the real world connections that you're going to, what's the authentic audience piece? What are those content standards and skills you're going to bring in? How your students are going to collaborate, right? Those are all those big ideas, important pieces for authentic learning. And then the back page is all the kind of nitty gritty. How do I actually do this? What are the actual lessons I'm going to do? And so we use a framework there, and all of our projects follow this framework. Start with why, think it through, work it out, fix it up, and share your awesome. Then your teachers can use that to help them plan. And finally, and I would argue the most important step is making sure you're providing your staff with that support along the way. If you want more authentic classrooms, we need to make sure we build that foundational knowledge of what authentic teaching and learning is through effective professional development that builds that foundational knowledge, that capacity. But we can't just stop there, because it's one thing to go to a workshop, feel excited and really ready to implement, and then get into the classroom and there's so much going on. It's, a lot of times that just falls by the wayside. That's just how things are. So providing your teachers with those instructional resources to help ensure that implementation, those lessons, those ready-made projects to help them, either just implement or customize to make them work for themselves. And then finally, and I would argue most importantly, that ongoing support piece, offering them that person that they can go to. Who's that person that they can go to if they're struggling or if they need help throughout the year? So they know that someone's there on their side, coaching them, being there for them along the way, ensuring that efficacy. So those are the 4 steps to kind of move that needle in improving teaching and learning. And I also put together strategies that are right now strategies. So these strategies are all about things that your teachers can do tomorrow. So, if they want to dip their toes in kind of this authentic learning, put together some ways that they can start doing and moving that needle a little bit forward in those types of activities as well. And I just have one last question you can put in the chat, or you can open up your mic. What are some ideas you got from that, or other ideas you were thinking about that might help you increase student engagement and improve teaching and learning?
I know I was thinking more about the authentic audiences and how do you bring in folks who, maybe it is parents, maybe it's community members, but how do you bring those folks in to help make it feel more real, more relevant, that kind of stuff. We did that some with a summer program we had for high school students.
Yeah.
Where we had probably 150 people come to it. And I felt like for not very many students, there were probably, I don't know, less than 10. And so we had a whole bunch of folks, not just parents and grandparents, but like community members who came. And so I think that definitely helped, but it's thinking about how could I make that a more frequent kind of part of what we're doing.
Right. Yeah, that's great. Yeah, bringing those, and it's a lot of you, once you kind of know what it is your students are going to be engaged in, and once you know that, you need, kind of getting to that piece right away, because that's the logistic part of it. And one thing that, with the schools we've worked with in project-based learning, we've been able to help them and kind of coordinate, whether it is those real world experts, which we can provide, but also like giving tips and ideas to help bring the word out and to get those, whether it's community members or, kind of the authentic audience, what that looks like. Because every project's different, what that authentic audience might be. Yeah. Great point. Okay. If you have anything else, feel free to put in the chat, but I think I went way over my time, Tara. I'm so sorry. So
I'll wrap us,
I'm
bring us home
interested.
here.
I'm interested in the right now ones that you flashed up there. So I'll be exploring that later.
okay,
So
great.
thank you. Yeah.
Yes. Oh, and please let me know. And if there's anything else you need, just let us know.
I love that Dawn put those together because they're great things like for your next staff meeting, just to give teachers, here's something, I always say, like, let's improve inquiry 15 minutes at a time. We don't have to go wholesale giant projects, right? Like we can just get teachers more and more comfortable with it. So glad to hear that.
Baby steps.
Yeah,
baby steps.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And that's something, we do tell our teachers we work with, it's like, we can't just jump full, you're not going to jump all the way in the water. We have to, ease our way, take the temperature a little bit, and then we work our way to the to the shallow end.
Good stuff. So I'll bring us home here with some tips on teacher morale. And a lot of this is stuff that you can look at in the document on your own, but I definitely want to point out a few resources that might be helpful for you. And the main thing is thinking about sort of this framework when it comes to teacher morale, that really these are the top 4 things I think that you can do as an administrator to really protect that morale. And it comes down to valuing their time, providing them support, showing them respect, and expressing gratitude. And I put them kind of in that order. And as you see, I'll give you some ideas for each of these, but sometimes we jump right to express gratitude. And I put out a big warning anytime I'm talking to administrators, because if we jump straight there and we don't do the other 3, sometimes that gratitude can backfire, right? I don't want your stinking cute, mint, whatever it might be, right? Different mint gum. There's all sorts of cute puns or whatever. Like that's great and fine if you're doing the other 3 as well. But it's just a nice framework to think about. So I'll give you a couple tips under each one of these. So under value time, this is probably the number 1 thing that teachers say they want, right? Time. So, and someone mentioned this earlier, and I really appreciated that. It's protecting their planning time, either individual or, as was mentioned, that PLC, that collaborative time. Prioritize and protect that. If you make it clear to them that you value that time for them, you're not going to schedule things over that, they will really repay that in dividends. Other things you might be able to do, take over a class for them. Just say, hey, I'll take this one. And I know you're just as busy too, right? But if you're feeling like that's something that that you need to attend to morale, that's just something that you can do. This is just a good check for yourself. Again, these aren't, these are things that are kind of intuitive, but fewer, shorter meetings. And making them after school, anything that's after school, as was mentioned as well, like make those virtual or asynchronous wherever possible. So you're really, limiting the amount of time you're asking them to spend outside of the normal school hours. And then this was kind of a creative one I saw somewhere, which is hiring some high school students for coverage duties, particularly if you're having staff shortages like bus duty or lunch duty, those sorts of things. Maybe there's some high school students in your district that can come over and serve that function for you, and you can hire them. So just another kind of way to not bring your teachers in on doing, all those extra things. So a few tips, hopefully those are helpful for valuing time. Then the next category is providing support, and everything that's highlighted here are some actual resources that are in the resource document. So, but first little tip is when teachers come to talk, sometimes I'm guilty of this, is I just, I'm comfortable. This is my chair behind the desk. And it's just a little, like we were talking about earlier, small things that you can do, whether it's presentation makes a difference, or just moving from behind the desk and coming, where you're talking to them at a table together. That just indicates support in a much more tangible way. And the other thing is to make sure, and we talk a lot about mental health as a society now, a little bit more than maybe we have in the past, but I would say make that part of your, your conversation with your students. So we have a couple of resources, you can bring them in. There's a mental health tracker and an avoiding burnout checklist. So these are a couple resources that you could share in your next staff meeting, just to say, I care about you and I'm providing you some tools to make sure you're able to see where am I, and whether that's something you have them share with you or whether they self-assess these things. But it's a way for them to kind of understand where they are. And the cool thing about that avoiding burnout checklist is also what you can do about it. So it kind of gives you some self-reflection questions to see where am I on a burnout scale. But if you are in this kind of danger zone, what are some things that you can do about it? So those are a couple of resources. Also embedding mental health into PD as you have that professional development time, including there's lots of resources now out there to include some mental health strategies in there. And the other one is reminding them to take it slow, right? That we're still at the beginning of the school year, and especially some of your new teachers, right? Some of them are so gung-ho and they want to just go all in and try all these things that they've always been dreaming about since they decided they wanted to become a teacher. And so sometimes you might need to remind them to take it slow. And this is a fun little give myself permission to card. So there's a little template there. You can encourage your teachers to use that for themselves, give themselves permission to not do something, right? Or to take this day for myself, whatever it is. And then also want to provide support. Here's a funding request form. So sometimes it's just giving the teachers the option to tell you what it is they need. So this is something you can say, all right, what's the goal that that you want to accomplish? What's a resource that you need? What's the cost of it? And it's just an easy framework for you to evaluate that. All right, we'll roll through the rest of these really fast. Show them respect. Don't lean on the same people all the time. And that's hard. Just like you mentioned, the same people show up to the events. Sometimes we find ourselves asking the same people for those extra things all the time because they are good people and good workers. And, in one hand they want to, but it's one way you can really burn them out. Ask for their feedback, but also act on it, right? And that could just mean, I hear you, but we can't do this. And here's why. But make sure you follow up on those asks for feedback. Another one here is avoid the temptation to punish the group for issues of a few. If there are a few people who are, whatever it might be, that's something that you need to address, like don't punish the whole group and just call those people out, right? Because otherwise everyone else feels a little bit like they haven't been quite disrespected. Notice and acknowledge the student progress. That means so much to teachers. They are so caring about what their students are doing. So if you say, I saw, Johnny really improved his reading, or I saw this project that your biology students were doing and it was amazing, acknowledge that. It means a ton to your teachers and shows that you respect their work. And then being clear about priorities. I'll take just a minute to explain this resource because this is a resource that we've found really popular, has really surprised us. So making sure you're very clear about your priorities. And one way to do that is we've taken all of the, for K-8, the standards for science, social studies, math, and ELA, and put them in here. And we have a few different criteria there in the gray columns, if you're able to see that document. And this is all editable. So you can then score, whether it's that standard, the criteria that we have, and you can change this, it's things like, is this something they're going to need for later learning? Is this something that has application outside the classroom? But whatever it is that's meaningful to you, those are your criteria, and you can rate them there. I think it's 1 to 5, or maybe it's 1 to 10. I can't remember. And then it will sort them. So your higher rated standards will pop to the top so that you can see what are the things that are most important to you, and you can share that with your teachers. So if they're stressing over so much to teach and so little time, they'll know what your priorities are, at least according to the standards. So if that's a tool that can be helpful, you can utilize that. And then lastly is express gratitude. And this is those things, like I said, if you're doing this without the other piece, it can backfire, but they certainly do go a long way. And some of you have mentioned some of these things already, but handwritten notes. I put this in there, but I really believe it's powerful. Sometimes you can tell the difference between you're walking down the hallway and an administrator smiles like they have 1,000 things on their mind. And when an administrator smiles at you knowingly, like, I understand where you are and I appreciate the job you're doing. That just knowing smile is really, really nice. Walk around and distribute popcorn. It's nice because you get the whole smell going. If you don't burn it, don't be that person. This is a fun idea, which is to bring in a coffee or dessert food truck or some other kind of food truck, a grilled cheese food truck, whatever. It's just something kind of a little perk that might be right outside the school. Could be really fun. And then lastly, teachers love a deal. So one way to show your gratitude for them is to find those deals and put them in front of them. So maybe you can ask community members, or different businesses, would you be willing to give a teacher discount? And then you can share that. But if you don't have time to go solicit those, there is this ultimate list of stores, which is a website that has all the stores, like a lot of national chains that have discounts for teachers. So you might share that with your teachers. I'm sure they will love it. So I think we pretty much used up most of our time, but maybe we can just wrap out just something just to reflect on which of those ideas you want to explore. You can do that on your own time. And then we'll wrap up just really quickly with how we can help you hopefully achieve some of these goals yourselves.
So I shared this earlier, kind of our three-prong approach to, really moving the needle on improving teaching and learning. And so I want to share with you kind of how we can help and support you in that journey. So the first thing when we talk about professional development is really understanding your needs. And so if you're interested, we have put together a 5-minute, very quick needs analysis survey, and fill that out, and we will create for you a needs analysis report, which even if you don't use us for PD, that is yours to keep and to help you plan for future professional development. And if you'd like to also get the input of your teachers, we can also do that for you. We can survey your teachers and put together the report as well. So identifying the PD needs is the first step. But then you have to actually make it happen. Okay, what is that PD? And our approach is something that's memorable, meaningful, fun, but it's also practical, right? We want to make sure our teachers walk away with practical strategies that they can use the next day, that they're collaborating, they're immersed. We're modeling those kind of best practices in a very engaging way. And it's creative. And as you can see by all their smiles there, they're just having a good time. It's not a sit and get. This is an immersive experience, kind of experience we want our students to have. But we know we can't stop there. We want to also provide our teachers with those resources to take what they've learned in that professional development and bring it to life in their classrooms. And we've done that by creating those Blue Apple projects, those project-based learning units, which that is one of the options for the giveaway here in a minute. And we also have some free resources like our teaching strategies, our timely topics that we come out with every month, quick inquiry-based lessons. We also have some science ones I didn't include here that are coming out. Webinars, monthly thought leadership webinars as well. So I'd love to get your teachers on these lists, get them those resources too. And all that information is in the HyperDoc. And then finally, a very important piece is that coaching piece, that ongoing support. And we work with a lot of teachers in this type of role as part of our professional development. And you can see their lesson modeling, teaching some kindergartners about financial literacy there, and connecting students with pen pals from an Indian reservation, creating resources for an alternative high school, and bringing in those real world experts to either Zoom or come in person to a class to kind of share their expertise as well. So those are the different things that we could support you in really transforming and rethinking, reimagining, and helping you meet your goals and improving teaching and learning. Because of that, I'm gonna let Tara kind of close us out here.
All right. Yeah, so just I wanted to let you know, hopefully the resources we shared today are helpful. Feel free to use them. Hopefully there are things you can use right away, like we said, practical. But if you want to do anything further with us, like we talked about the Flex PD, any of those Blue Apple projects, or that ongoing coaching support, you can get started with the free needs analysis, or just let us know, and we'd be happy to do that and work with you. We are a nonprofit, so we never want costs to get in the way, and we're offering a 20% discount on anything that we do with you as a result of this event. So I think we're ready for the giveaway. Super simple. We would just love a little feedback. So all you need to do, if on this call, you can have your choice of either a lunch and learn, which is we get maybe up to 20 teachers at your school, and we can come in for a virtual learning topic, something like what we did today on project-based learning or on alternative assessment, all sorts of topics that we could do that. Or you can get 3 Blue Apple projects and have 3 of your teachers give those projects a try, have that resource for them. So if you want to just scan that bit.ly, there's a short little survey there. You can just pick which one you want. And then we have a couple questions that are optional to give us some information about what would be helpful on these in the future. So Great. If you can, I think that might be in the chat box as well.
Yeah, looks like Erin just put that in. So we're all set.
Thanks, Erin. So you can either do the QR code or click it from the chat box, but we'd appreciate some feedback, and that's how we can give you your choice of the giveaway option. And Erin will be in touch to let you know how to redeem whichever one you picked. I think that's it. Did we make it?
We did. We are 2 minutes. I'm so sorry. We are 2 minutes over, but yeah, please reach out. We are here, and we thank you for everything you do every day for your schools and in your community.
Yes, indeed. Thanks so much, everyone. Have a great night. Be careful,
Thank
those of
you.
you driving.
Yes.
Take care.